Basically, I see it like this. If I'm surrounded by people who are in different ways smarter than me, I'm learning something. And if I'm learning something, I'm growing. So if you're going through a quarter life crisis and you want to get out of it, the one piece of advice that I would have is welcome back to the Quarter Life Crisis podcast, folks. I'm Ryan, and on this podcast, we talk about all the tips and tricks to help you navigate the confusing 20s. When I first started this podcast, I was looking to answers on all these differences. I felt like I was constantly pulling on a thread of questions that focused on what makes me so different from all these other people out there that seem to have life all figured out. You know, questions like what makes the person sitting opposite me so successful? Or why is that person not uniquely burdened by their quarter life crisis like I am? Or why do I feel like the only one overwhelmed with all these life choices? It's easy for us to feel uniquely burdened by our struggles.
Why is it always me?
But the truth is that the more podcasts I do, the more I realize that there's actually so many similarities in all of us. And the fact that so many people are similar is great because it means we can find answers since other people have experienced the problems that we are going through, although it may not always seem like it. And I think one important distinction to realize is that where other people are on chapter 3, we may only be on chapter 1 of our story. So in today's reflection, I want to talk about how recognizing our similarities might just help you solve a little bit of your quarter life crisis. And it all starts with something which sounds incredibly simple but is actually extremely hard: surrounding yourself with the right people. Now, I think a lot about the people I spend my time with. More specifically, how do they support me? And what I mean by that is how much do they challenge me to grow as a person? Now, I don't want to be some sort of hustle guru telling you that you have to drop all of your friends who don't want to build million-dollar businesses. In fact, I'm probably telling you the opposite. But I think the important thing is not surrounding yourself with a bunch of yes people who always smile and think everything you do is great. Because what I've realized, especially recently, is what's going to be more impactful on your life is people who have the belief in you to push you even when you're considering quitting or giving up on chasing your dreams. The people who motivate you to constantly pursue more. And by that, I don't necessarily mean any financial more, but just pushing yourself to a higher standard. Because what's probably going to be most impactful on your life is creating a group of people who are like rocket fuel to your personal growth. And these aren't only people who support you, but they also challenge you, inspire you, and hold you accountable to the things you say you're gonna do. I know that especially during my 4-month gym challenge, this was essential to my success, and luckily I had my coach, but on top I had the content, and I had people who were trying to do the whole workout process with me. It's kind of like that quote, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You see, at the risk of getting extremely philosophical, I'd say this. I disagree with the statement that anything is possible. I do, however, think that nothing is impossible. What do I mean by that? The chance of me becoming a famous actor right now is extremely unlikely, and yet not impossible. If I were to commit the rest of my life tirelessly, working every day to get better at the craft, showing up for all kinds of auditions, networking with the right people, then it may just happen that one day I land that movie gig that would end up propelling my status to that of a famous actor. It sounds almost outrageous to say it, and yet you can't disagree with me that it might be possible. Now let's drag this metaphor out further, and let's say I would do that. How would I go about getting to that stage? I'd probably find the people who have done it before me and try and understand how they did it. Not just in terms of going to auditions, but also the tips and tricks that helped them get there. Basically, I see it like this. If I'm surrounded by people who are in different ways smarter than me, I'm learning something. And if I'm learning something, I'm growing.
Surround yourself with people smarter than you.
So if you're going through a quarter life crisis and you want to get out of it, the one piece of advice that I would have is talk to people who are doing or have done what you are trying to achieve, rather than just blindly following what mom and dad said. While your parents may mean well, they probably have no experience with that what you want to achieve. Or in worst case, they have negative experiences with that which you want to achieve. I was fully aware of this when I started this podcast, and it's the exact reason why I speak to the people that I do. I knew that there were plenty of people out there who had already built their dreams, and I just had to understand the tools or strategies that they used in order to get them to that stage, so that I could translate what they did onto myself and ultimately help me build a life I love. But while it's important to speak to people who are ahead of you to help you understand where you need to go, it's equally important to have people who are willing to get down in the mud with you. People who are experiencing that same daily grind you go through. So while you see me spending most of my time talking to experts and inspiring individuals in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, I have an amazing team of individuals who are helping me do just that. And so I thought I'd introduce you to some of them. Let's meet the Quarter Life Crisis team. Every day there are so many different conversations going on in front and behind the camera. I get to engage with a vibrant mix of creative individuals, all with their own passions, and I love it. In my team alone, I have a dancer, a photographer, a documentarist, an environmentalist, all brought together not just by their talent, but also by a shared experience. On the face of it, we come across as very different. I mean, we literally live as far apart from each other as we possibly could. And yet we share one important similarity, which brings us all together. You guessed it, the quarter life crisis. And to give a practical example of how we try to inspire each other, recently we started something new at the Quarter Life Crisis. Because in case you didn't see last week's podcast, I talk about setting goals for 2024. And so in order to help each other achieve those goals, during the team meeting, we found out that a bunch of us are reading books this year. Now, none of us have the same reading goal. Some have crazy goals like reading 24 books this year, while others have reading goals, such as myself, of only reading 5. What can I say? I have a lack of time. But since we had this overlapping goal, we decided to create a book club, whereby we motivate each other to continuously keep pursuing that goal of reading as many books as the person said they wanted to. Whether someone plans to read 24 books this year or 24 pages, the point of this book club isn't about hitting the numbers. It's about creating the room whereby we can challenge, motivate each other to continuously keep growing. If you're thinking about creating something like this in your team or in your life, honestly, the specific goal doesn't matter as much as the community you're building together. In this exchange of ideas and experiences that enriches our discussions, and as a result, the content we also produce as a team. I've reflected a lot on how to create the circle around me that I need in order to help me get to where I want to go. And here's what I've realized. They say that you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. If we assume that to be true, then I would recommend the following. You're going to need 2 people who are miles ahead of you that are essentially acting as mentors or coaches to help you get to where you want to go. Then you're going to need 2 people who are going through the same daily grind as you are. And whatever that looks like for you, that could be completely different. It could be in a 9 to 5, or it could be where you start 2 businesses and you find 2 other people who are also going through the struggle of building 2 businesses. And then finally, I would recommend you have 1 person who has known you since the start, who has been a lifelong friend. There is this very toxic narrative that you should dump everyone who's not growing with you, and that's extremely stupid. Because the fact of the matter is, you probably did not become friends with that person because they would help you obtain some sort of goal. Or if you did, that probably makes you a gold digger. Besides that, it's inevitable that as time goes on, you will lose friends. So those that stick around care about you probably the most. Make sure to treasure those people because they are invaluable. And then the final point on all of this is, if you feel like you have no one in your surrounding that is taking the initiative to set this up, maybe you have to become the person that establishes it. One example that I have of this is a little over a year ago, I created an entrepreneur community with 5 of my friends who were all going through the daily grind of what it is to build a business. And had I not taken the initiative to start up that community, I wouldn't have been part of a team that still meets a year later, once a month, sometimes twice a month, to talk about the struggles that we're going through to help each other get through this process. And what I always think back to is that on our very first meeting, we all spoke about the fact that we were all struggling for so long. And the fact that they finally had a community to talk about these struggles with was something very relieving. So it could be that you just need to be the person to take the initiative. And with that being said, I'm going to conclude this podcast this week with the question: are you being intentional with the people you let in your inner circle? If you're looking for someone who is as hungry for growth as you probably are, then make sure to subscribe to this channel, because I can assure you I am. I'll see you next week.